Hi, welcome to the Export Marketing and Preparing for the West Africa Connect Trade Event program. My name is Karen Gibbs with By Hand Consulting, and it is a pleasure to be working with you all on this program. So today we have the 7th video in our series of 8 coaching videos, and we'll be talking today about production planning and supply chain management. As we have discussed before, one of the standards of an export-ready business is that you are able to plan production to ensure on-time delivery and consistent quality of your export orders, and that you can calculate the time to fulfill export orders so it meets the expectations of your target customer. As we remember from our video number 2, when we talked about export strategies, the 2 foundations of an export strategy is to understand your target market and to identify and understand the expectations of your target customer. So the universal expectations of all customers, no matter if you're selling through B2B or B2C channels. So no matter if you're selling to the end consumer, a small retail store, a large retail store, or a wholesale company, the expectations of all customers is that you will have good communication, consistent quality, on-time delivery, that orders are shipped complete, that you have safe and affordable shipping, and that accurate documentation and labeling. So really, how do you make sure that you have consistent quality and on-time delivery? Because these are the foundations of being successful in the export market. How do you achieve those is by 2 things: having a really good definition of what quality is and have a good production planning tool so that you can deliver your orders on time. So let's review both of those. The foundation of good production planning and supply chain management is have a clear definition of what you mean by quality. So you want to document your definition in words, images, swatches, numbers, right? Very specific definition of what quality means for you, right? What is your production going to be so it matches the quality of your original sample? The second step is that you want to share that definition with your suppliers and your buyers to make sure they understand your definition of quality and agree with it. So really, the foundation here is communication. So quality can mean a lot of different things, right? And you want to be specific. So for example, you want to define exactly what the colors will be, what kind of variation you might have in the colors. You want to describe the pattern that they can expect to have in the fabric, for example. You want to detail the size or dimensions. So what are the specific size of a small, medium, or large? You want to make sure you have consistency in the craftsmanship. So in the stitching, in the sewing, in the cutting. You want to have consistency in the texture. So this could mean thread count. You want to have consistency in the cleanliness of the fabric and the delivery of the product. So those are just some examples that apply to this dress, for example, from my friends at Zuri. So really, though, the most important thing is that you define what quality means to you, you document it, and you communicate it to your buyers and suppliers. Right? So when it's clearly defined, then you can hold yourself and you can hold your suppliers accountable to what that means. And remember, your production always has to match the quality of the original sample that your customer saw in person or online. So can there be variation in your production, right? Yes, absolutely. Handmade, artisan made, and small batch production from small workshops inherently have variation. You will have variation. Your responsibility is to understand that variation and explain what the variation will be to your customer. You need to understand the variations that you can expect from your suppliers, of your fabric, of your threads, of your findings. Right? So that's one. And two is you want to make sure your customers understand the variation that they can expect from you, that the size might vary by an inch, that the color might vary from a dark green to a light green, for example, right? So yes, there will be variation. Your job is to explain that variation. Now let's talk about production planning, right? So clear definition of quality is the first step. Second step is you need to have a production plan. So how do you create a production plan? I think there are three very simple steps. The first is you want to outline all steps for sourcing, producing, and preparing your order for export, right? So a production plan is not just the producing part, but it's also buying all of the materials and it's getting that order ready to ship. So here's an example of all the steps. First, you get the confirmation of order. Maybe you get a deposit on your order or you figure out how you're going to finance it. The third step is you purchase your materials and all the components. The fourth step is you receive those materials and components. The fifth step is you go through the first stage of production. The sixth step is the second stage of production. The seventh step is the final finishing. The eighth step is the package, labeling, and packing the order to ship. The ninth step is putting together all the export documentation. And the 10th step is to actually deliver it to the shipper. So the first step, outline all these steps. The second step in creating a production plan is you take those steps and you determine how long it will take to complete each step, right? And you assign a deadline to be completed for each step in the production. Here you can see, I like to use a very simple Excel sheet or like a grid to map out the production of each order. So here we're estimating how long it'll take for each step in the production. For each step, the timing might be different, right? This is just an example. Okay, the third step, and this is so important, is that you want to schedule multiple quality control inspections during your production process. Too often people think, well, I'll check the quality of the product at the end, right? Right before I ship it to a customer. Well, by the time it's at the end, it's too late, right? To fix the problems in process. So I like to think there's usually 3 to 4 times in your process where you're going to check quality. And you decide what works best for your production. But I think the first point of checking quality is when you are receiving the materials to make your order, right? So you're going to receive those materials, you're going to look at the color, the pattern, the texture, the cleanliness, right? The construction of it. Does it all match the original quality of what you expected to buy? If not, you got to send those materials back before you start production. Then I like to break up production into 2 phases. So perhaps the first stage of production is all of the cutting, right? The cutting of the apparel. So go through that first stage of cutting and preparing all the materials and do another round of quality control. Then Perhaps after the second stage of production, where the garment is all finished, do another quality control step. Does it match the color, the size, the pattern, the cleanliness of the original sample? Then you're going to package and label all of the product for export and get together all of your export documentation. And at that point, I like to do another level of quality control, which is looking at, do you have all the right labeling in your product? Is it labeled with the code? Is it packaged correctly so it will stay clean during shipment? Do you have all that export documentation together? So schedule out the quality control checks in your planning, in your process of preparing an export order, and also determine who's going to do that quality control, right? If you're checking the quality of your own production, that's great. Just make sure you do it, right? Don't assume that it's perfect quality, right? Do that check against your original definition of what quality is. Now, you also want to make sure that your production time for an order aligns with the delivery needs and the delivery expectations of your target customer. Now, remember, this is the same table that we saw in video number 2 when we talked about the expectations of different target customers in terms of when do they expect their order to be delivered. Right? A wholesaler, which is B2B, or a large retailer will expect their delivery in 3 or more months. A small retail store, again, that's in a B2B channel, will expect an order within 3 to 6 weeks. Right? And the end consumer, so if you're selling B2C or direct to consumer, they're going to expect that order usually much faster. So here's a question of really, do you need to have production of these and inventory of your collection on hand, or can you produce to order? So double check that against your production plan. Maybe you need to buy materials ahead of time so that you have those on hand so you can make something faster, right? Or maybe you need to have the whole product produced before you actually go to sell it, because if you're selling to that end consumer, they're going to want to have that product pretty quickly. So what happens if there are delays in production? Production delays are a normal part of supply chain management and export. Your job is to communicate delays quickly and clearly to your customers and offer solutions for how to manage the delays. So really, one of the critical elements for success in supply chain management and production planning is communicate, communicate, communicate. Right? A problem only becomes a disaster if it's not communicated. A problem that's communicated well and quickly leaves opportunity for a solution to be solved. So, as an activity, what I'd like you to do is complete the production plan template for an average order or for your best-selling product. I want you to calculate how long will it take you to fulfill this average order or an order for your best-selling product. And remember, keep in mind the time it takes to source all of the materials and produce the product and get that product ready for export. So complete the production plan template and calculate how long it will take to produce an average export order. Thank you so much. I hope this has given you some practical tips in how to manage your supply chain and produce a product, an order on time and good quality.